And welcome everybody to another edition of the GSMC Football Podcast brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. I'm your host, Kenneth Gruenfelder, and as always, it's great to have you guys here on this Thursday. We got a lot to talk about on today's show like we normally do. Before I get into that, I just want to remind you guys to be part of the show. It's very important here. We got a new graphic for this. So to get your comments recognized in the chat and I highlight them during the broadcast, make sure to go to the following link, streamelements.com/gsmcsportsnetwork./tip. It really helps the show. It makes the show even better. It makes you, the audience, part of the show. And that's really what this is all about is, interacting with the viewers. And that's something that I want to continue to do. Not just with this podcast, but also the baseball podcast as well, is to give you guys your moment and to recognize you in the broadcast. So once again, so make sure to go to the link there. And then, of course, for the bonus coverage materials that are not covered by this broadcast, I hit the wrong thing. Make sure to go to patreon.com and search up GSMC Sports Network, and that is where you can find all the exclusive content for my podcasts as well as the other podcasts here on the GSMC Sports Network. So with that, let's get into what we are going to talk about today. So obviously, to start off the show, we're going to talk about the NFC South and the mayhem that's going on with that division because it seems like nobody wants to take it. So we'll get into that. Then in the second part of the show, we're going to talk about Tyreek Hill and him being added to the injury report this week. We'll talk about that and how that can impact the Dolphins-Patriots game. Then in the third part of the show, we're going to talk about Brock Purdy being put into concussion protocol, and it looks like Sam Darnold is in line to start on Sunday, so we'll get into that. And then we will preview tonight's game between the Buffalo Bills and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. So let's get right into the first topic of the show, which is discussing the NFC South. So yesterday I talked about the NFC North. I talked about some of the teams and how they did over the weekend. So I want to get into the NFC South because it's a very interesting division. Because right now you have the Falcons who are in first place. They're 4-3 on the season. And I still look at them. I don't think they're going to win the division. I still would choose either the Saints or the Bucs to win the division. Even though the Saints haven't been playing good football this season, but Desmond Ridder continues to turn the ball over. I just don't really. The quarterback position, I think, is what ultimately is going to hold the Falcons back from winning this division. But right now, they beat the Bucs in Tampa, which wasn't an easy game to win, and especially because Desmond Ridder fumbled it 3 times. I still like either the Bucs or the Saints to win this division, but still, I mean the Bucs. Tonight's game is very important. Obviously, I'll go into more detail with that when we get into the final part of the show, but I still like either one of those two teams. But the Bucs have their issues on offense. They really couldn't get anything going on Sunday. But I like their defense. I mean, Sunday was a defensive battle. The Falcons' defense is not bad either. But the Bucs' defense is still pretty good. It's their offense you got to worry about. And tonight, in Buffalo, going up against a good defensive front. And also the other thing, too, is Baker Mayfield and Chris Godwin, I know, we're both on the injury report as well. Baker's dealing with a knee injury. So we'll see what happens with that. And my dog's barking again. And then for the Saints, I really wasn't that high on the Saints going into this year. And really it's just because it spans back to last year. And Derek Carr really didn't have his best year last year. And going to the Saints and, he reunited with Dennis Allen. I don't know. I just really wasn't a fan of the Saints coming into this year. But I think talent-wise, I would say they have like the most talent out of the other two teams. I mean, I think you would probably take Derek Carr over Baker and Desmond Ridder, even though Derek Carr hasn't been good this year, and a lot of people are calling him washed. So it's not like, I don't think it's that outlandish to say that. But now with the Chris Olave stuff, you don't know how that's going to impact the season for the Saints going forward at the moment. So that's a wait and see thing. And the offense just really has not been good. The play calling is something that Saints fans are complaining about, and I mean, yeah, rightfully so. You watch last week's game, and it's really just checkdowns to Alvin Kamara. That's really what the offense was. And there was a couple of times during the game, well, in the second half, where you're like, oh, okay, here are the Saints. This is what they're supposed to be. But at the end of the day, it was like too little, too late. And they had a chance to tie the game against the Jags, and they just they couldn't get it in. So yeah, I mean, right now it's those three teams. It's really anybody's division at this point. I mean, I looked at the Bucs as the favorite just because they were 3-1. They beat the Saints on the road, and it was like, hey, they're not that bad. And then they lose to the Lions. They lose back-to-back home games. They lose to the Lions, which close game, and then they lose to the Falcons 16-13 when the Falcons turned the ball over. So. Nick Urillo in the chat. Kamara has 35 receptions in 4 games for 177 yards. Yeah. And a lot of it's checkdowns. And listen, it's good for fantasy. Don't get me wrong. I have Kamara in a few leagues, so I'm okay with it. But for the Saints, you got to open up the offense. You got to do something. And, I mean, Derek Carr is just not on the same page with his receivers. He's turned the ball over. I know the offensive line was a little banged up last week. But, you got to figure the Saints could be better than this. They can. They have a winnable game on Sunday against the Colts in Indy. So, I mean, listen, I don't know if they're going to win, but I think that's still a winnable game. I mean, you're going up against Gardner Minshew, who, listen, performed well against the Browns, but is a backup quarterback. So, we'll just have to wait and see there. Falcons, they're on the on the road against the Titans, and Will Levis is actually going to be starting that game, so he'll be making his debut. But still, I mean, the Titans have a good defense. They did trade Kevin Byard, so the defense is not going to be as good, but it's still a tough game when you got a quarterback that's turning the ball over. Yeah, it's going to be tough. Is Olave playing? Right now, I think it's too soon to tell. I don't think there's any updates on it. I mean, we could check Sleeper, but because that's usually where they give updates. But I would assume he's not going to play. As of yesterday, it says he wasn't listed on the practice report. So I would think he's not going to play, but I would be kind of surprised if he plays. But we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, he is him and Derek Carr weren't on the same page even before all this. And I kind of feel for Derek Carr because he just seems like he can't catch a break with his wide receivers, getting in trouble. I kind of feel for him in that aspect that he's got to deal with this, off the field stuff with some of his teammates. But the Saints still got a game to play, and we'll see what happens on Sunday. But with this division though, I would still say the Bucs, even though I just don't feel I really don't feel great about it at all. They were 3-1, and you felt good about them, and then after they played the Lions, that was it. And then now they lost to the Falcons. But this division by no means is over. With the Falcons being in first place. I mean, the Panthers, if they won a couple of games, they'd be in this conversation. I haven't talked about them at all, but they're 0-6, and they don't really have a chance. If they, like I said, if they could have won maybe some of their games early on, maybe they'd be in the conversation. But they've already lost to the Saints. They've already lost to the Falcons the first 2 weeks of the season, I believe. Um, so they're not really in the conversation. So right now, you look at it's the other three teams. I still like the Bucs. I mean, you could call it Baker bias, but the Saints need to prove something to me. I think it's to me. I think it's still going to be either the Bucs or the Saints. But right now, the Falcons, got the lead, and like I've talked about on the previous shows, the way my predictions have been going, you might want to maybe put a little wager down on the Falcons to win the division because I'm counting them out. I mean, they still have a chance to win the division. They're in the lead. And they're going to be right there towards the end. It's just I don't really like the quarterback play right now. Nick says I like the Bucs, but I think the Bills have to bounce back tonight. Yeah, I agree with that. I will get into that when we talk about the game tonight. In the final part of the show. But yeah, I mean tonight's a big game for both teams. The Bucs, it's going to be really tough. But they have a good defense, and Josh Allen's been turning the ball over. So you know what? They could take advantage of that. The other thing too is the Bucs just can't run the ball. They're one of the worst running teams in the NFL. And I mean I don't know what the whole situation was, but you wonder why didn't they try to bring back Leonard Fournette? I don't know what the situation was with that. I mean, I guess because they thought Rachaad White was going to take the next step, but he's kind of gone backwards this year. Because I know even from a fantasy perspective, like myself and, some people liked him going into this year. Also, especially as a pass catcher, but he's kind of taken a step back, So I don't know. I think they should have kept Fournette, but for whatever reason they didn't want to bring him back. And some teams are looking at him, so he could be on a team at some point during the year. I think I saw I don't know what it was on. Was it on? I think on CBS. It was like a, I don't know if it was a hypothetical. Well, yeah, that's probably what it was. But maybe the Bucs trying to get Derrick Henry. I mean, that would definitely help. With their running game, but. I saw that on something. I don't remember. I think it might have been just a rumor on CBS. But again, that's a rumor. It doesn't mean anything. That was just something that I happened to come across briefly. So, but yeah, I mean, we'll see. I mean, the trade deadline is, next week. So whatever happens, we'll talk about it. But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the NFC South. Who do you guys think is going to win the division? Let me know in the comments. But yeah, so with that, we're going to take our first break of the show. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about Tyreek Hill and him being added to the injury report this week. It's possible he might miss some time. So, we'll talk about that, how it's going to impact Sunday's game against the Patriots. And, that'll be the second part of the show when we come back. So, stick around, and we'll be right back here on the GSMC Football Podcast.